you are serious about making a run for it.
We must keep going. The snow is blinding us.
Just keep walking.
Step into the way back. 3 words to sum it up: survival, loyalty, endurance. I'll break down every turn of their journey, uncover slick flick facts, and deliver the ultimate verdict. So you'll know if The Way Back is a must-watch survival epic or a skip. Soviets interrogate Janusz for spying, but he won't confess. They turn to his wife, pushing her until she breaks and accuses him. Janusz and several other prisoners are sentenced to 20 years in the Siberian Gulag. The prison is intentionally chosen for its brutal location.
Ваша тюрьма – это не наши оружия, собаки и проволока. Ваша тюрьма.
Any escape attempt is practically a death sentence. Inside the Gulag, life is even more horrifying. Prisoners stand in endless lines for tiny food rations. Violence is common. Fights break out over a single piece of bread. When a starving prisoner drops his ration, another man immediately snatches it. Janusz, unable to watch this cruelty, gives some of his own food away. The other prisoner, Smith, warns him that kindness can get him killed here. Janusz soon befriends Andrei, a former actor arrested because his films criticize Stalin. He's also a foreigner, an American, making him even more suspicious in the Soviets' eyes. Compared to them, the crimes of Janusz and Andrei are nothing next to Valka, a ruthless thief and murderer known for violence and intimidation.
Свитер.
Возьми пальто.
Хочу свитер.
As Janusz and Andrei grow closer, they begin to whisper about escape. Andrei, who has observed the camp closely, knows its weaknesses. But the problem remains. Where do they go after escaping? The north, west, and east are all Soviet-controlled. Their only hope is to head south, past Lake Baikal, toward the Mongolian border. They start gathering supplies and quietly recruit others to join them. Meanwhile, their daily routine continues. They spend long days cutting wood. Smith, who once seemed harsh, reveals his bravery during a deadly snowstorm. As guards force prisoners to keep working, men begin freezing to death. Smith defies orders and leads everyone behind trees for shelter. The guard, realizing he'll lose too many prisoners, reluctantly follows. This moment is when Janusz, Smith, Andrei, Zoran, and Kazik first truly meet and bond.
I am Zoran, Yugoslav. That's Janusz. And he is Kazik. Tomasz Horodin.
That night, the guard were still annoyed with Smith's behavior, so he and Janusz were transferred to a more dangerous place to work, namely in the mines. The stuffy air and the many explosions made Janusz helpless and often had hallucinations. That's why Janusz told Smith his intention to run away, but Smith said not to blindly trust Andrei because he likes to lie. Even so, Smith still supports his escape plan and will also join him. A few days later, Janusz finalized his plan.
Oh, we can go tonight. The storm will cover our tracks.
No, what are you talking about? It's a passing storm.
No, it's enough.
Janusz, that is impossible. We need...
Valka apparently overheard the debate and made him think about joining them. On the other hand, Smith was tasked with negotiating with the prisoner who was in charge of guarding the generator, and he said that Smith only had a 10-minute chance to escape after the generator was turned off. Once everything was ready, Janusz and the others agreed to flee during the blizzard, as the aftermath of the storm was able to wash away their footprints during the escape. Suddenly, Valka came and threatened Janusz to let him go on the escape. They had no choice and let Valka go, because if they didn't obey, Valka could kill him. Finally, they escaped by cutting the fence wire first. In the middle of the blizzard, they all managed to escape without being noticed by the guards. Long story short, they had walked 20 kilometers. They took a short break, and then Janusz started collecting food from those who came along. Valka, who used to be arrogant, is now kind and submissive to Janusz. They continued their journey. Janusz said it took around 4 weeks to reach Lake Ball. Not only did they have to endure extreme, unpredictable weather, they also had to deal with their respective weaknesses like Kazik, who has night blindness. He gets lost at night while looking for wood for a bonfire. Kazik couldn't see at all, which made him hallucinate. It made him lose his way and froze to death. His friends immediately buried Kazik, and they continued their journey. They had been walking for weeks, but still had not found the lake in question, and they had even run out of food supplies. Meanwhile, Smith, who can fish, uses his skill to treat his hunger, but over time the fish stocks ran out because of the constant fishing. At this point, Valka started to go crazy and hallucinate. He suggested killing one of them and consuming it, but Janusz refused. Janusz remained confident that he would find Lake Baikal, where they could find lots of food. That night, a pack of wolves appeared who were eating the deer. Valka and the others chased the wolves away and took the rest of the deer meat. From here, it can be seen how hungry and depressed they were by the situation. They ate the rest of the deer meat like starving animals. The next day, Janusz decided to go to Lake Baikal alone, considering that his friend's condition was no longer possible for them to continue walking. With some supplies prepared by Smith, Janusz left. The next challenge was even more extreme. Janusz had to face the ferocity of the wild, which even made him hallucinate. He almost gave up on these conditions, but thanks to his persistence and belief, Janusz finally arrived at Lake Ball. A week passed. Janusz returned to Smith and his friends, who were still waiting for him, even though he arrived in a very worrying condition. They all finally went to follow Janusz to Lake Ball. On their way, they were followed by a mysterious person who turned out to be a Polish woman who had escaped from the Soviet Union, just like Janusz and his friends. This woman was also lost without food. After Janusz and his friends received Irina, the woman's name, they all headed to Lake Baikal. However, Smith thought that Irina would only add to their burden because, of course, a woman like her would whine when she was tired. At Lake Baikal, they all stayed for several days. They gathered back the strength and energy that had been drained during the journey. They started cleaning themselves by bathing, washing clothes, shaving, and so on. The journey continued then. Smith asked Irina where she lived. She said that she used to live on a farm near Warsaw, and her parents were killed by Soviet soldiers. Apparently, Smith was suspicious because Warsaw was German territory, not the Soviets. Smith immediately told Irina not to lie. When they arrived at the settlement, Vok took the initiative to go there, but Janusz prevented him because the residents there might catch or kill them. The arrogant Valka ignored Yanin's words. She still went to look for food in the village. After disappearing for a while, Valka returned with a lot of meat, while his friends suspected that he had killed one of the villagers after seeing bloodstains on his clothes. Valka argued that it was the blood of the dog he killed. He also managed to steal alcohol to celebrate his birthday. It was while eating together that Anina finally admitted that she had lied about her past. Anina is actually the child of a Polish couple with communist beliefs. They lived well in Moscow, but suddenly her parents were arrested on charges of being spies. This incident had an impact on Irina's life, which became unclear. She was on the street with no direction. They went through day after day until they finally arrived at the border. Irina, who was initially considered a burden, has now become something positive. Her nature is sociable and easy to get along with, which makes everyone like her. Smith was even touched when Irina treated his feet, which were badly injured due to the long journey. By the way, Valka was the only person in this group who was still pro-Soviet and defended the Stalin regime. Therefore, Valka stopped for a moment when he arrived at the border between the Soviets and Mongolia. Even though he knew he could be caught, but for him, it was not a problem. At least he could be held in a better prison than before. This moment is the last time we see Valka because of his arrogance. He just leaves even though they have arrived at the border. Apparently, this is not the end of their journey because Mongolia also adheres to communist ideology, which is certainly not easy to live in. The situation also got worse after they found a temple that had been attacked by communist soldiers. Andrei, who was a priest, was concerned about the fact that even places of worship were not spared from their brutal attacks. They rested for a while because they were confused about where to go. Janusz had a pretty bold idea. He decided to go with his friends on foot through the Himalayan mountains via India. In addition, they could also ask for British military protection, which at that time was occupying India. This is where their second long journey begins. While having to face hunger, as well as other challenges, they walked with only a bottle of water. The terrain this time was more extreme than before, where before there were more frequent ice and snowstorms, while now the desert is dry and barren. In the middle of the trip, Smith was involved in an argument with Janusz about the source of water, which Smith saw from his surprise, which turned out to be a mirage. But it turned out that Janusz was wrong because what they saw was really an oasis. They immediately ran towards the oasis while quenching their thirst, bathing, and cleaning themselves. They spent the night there, but after realizing that they had run out of food, they continued their journey. Before leaving, they filled bottles with water, but unfortunately the water they brought had to be wasted because there was a terrible sandstorm. Meanwhile, Irina's condition was getting weaker with her swollen leg, which made her unable to walk anymore. Andrei then carried Irina, but because her condition was getting worse, this is where she finally died and was buried in the desert. They continued their journey. One by one, they had a fall. Next is Tomasz, who has a swollen leg. He must die, just like Irina. A few days later, Smith's condition also worsened, making him unable to move at all. At this point, it is a very critical part. We are presented with how the remaining 4 of them have to fight against death, which is ready to come at any time. Smith, who was helpless, ordered Janusz and the others to continue their journey, but Janusz refused. Instead, he ordered Andrei and Zoran to go first while carrying Smith. Evening came. Thankfully, they could stay together. The next morning, Zoran was shocked because a snake crossed his feet. Hoping that the snake could lead him to a water source, so Zoran followed the snake. Sure enough, they found a puddle of water, even though it was mixed with sand. After that, they killed and ate the snake. After being tormented by the hot desert for so long, they finally found a river. They spent a few moments bathing and carrying enough water supplies for the next journey. So many days, they walked without realizing they had arrived at the Great Wall of China. They finally arrived at the Tibetan border. Janusz and his friends were welcomed by the residents there. They were even told to stay and were given food like guests. When they gathered, Janusz then asked about the nearest route to India. One of the residents said that they could explore the mountains until they found a small village which was part of Indian territory. The man also said that the people there were very kind. They could provide food and shelter. The problem was that the current weather was not conducive to traveling there, so they had to wait until spring. Janusz thought that they could face any situation, so they decided to continue their journey the next day. Apparently, there was a difference of opinion where Smith decided that he would go alone to China and then look for an American military base and take shelter there. Meanwhile, Andres and Zoran prefer to wait until spring arrives. The next day, Janusz left alone. Andrei and Zoran immediately followed him. After an extreme journey, they finally arrived at a village on the outskirts of India. They were welcomed by the government and residents there.
Welcome to India.
Where have you come from? Siberia.
Which was the happy end of Janusz and his friend's journey after traveling 6,400 kilometers to seek freedom. The way back isn't just an escape story. It's a commentary on totalitarian oppression, war, and resilience under dehumanizing conditions. The Gulag represents the machinery of Stalinist terror. Janusz's journey reflects universal questions. What does freedom cost? How far would you go to survive? The story also explores trauma and memory, the mental scars of captivity and the weight of guilt, loss, and survival. Flick Mirror. The endless landscapes reflect the boundless challenges of life. The human spirit must push through despair to reach light. Flick Fact. Peter Weir consulted historical sources to capture the harsh realism of Siberian camps and long-distance survival, blending authenticity with cinematic storytelling. The Way Back is an epic meditation on survival, hope, and the resilience of the human spirit. It isn't about heroics or flashy triumphs. It's about enduring the impossible and confronting the inner self. Every step is earned. Every death and hardship adds weight. The ending is quietly powerful, leaving viewers reflecting on the nature of freedom, sacrifice, and human courage. Flick Verdict is a must-watch, emotionally profound, visually stunning, and deeply human. If you were inspired by Janusz and his incredible journey, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dive film breakdowns, and ring the bell so you never miss a Flick Favorites adventure. Comment below. If you were on this journey, could you survive?